Welcome again to Vital Perspectives. This week we have, and I'd like to introduce you to Mr. John Hagadorn, who is, now correct me, the president of the Richmond Chapter.
That is correct.
Of Mended Hearts. And we want to share with you some very, very informative and inspirational information about taking care of your life, taking care of your heart, and those around you who have, problems or issues with heart disorders, heart disease, what have you. John, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And John and I met probably a little over a year ago. I had my own challenges with heart disease, never having been diagnosed with heart issues in my life. I went home, went to bed, and praise God, woke up one night about 12:30 with chest pains and was so disoriented I couldn't call anyone to help me or use the telephone. So I knew how to walk. So I walked down the stairs and to the car and drove myself to the hospital, which is not recommended. And when I got there to the emergency room, they said, "You're in cardiac arrest." And all that followed led me to hear about Mended Hearts and the information and how helpful they could be. And this whole world of heart disease was like a foreign country to me. And I think I know I am here today having had additional problems because of Mended Hearts, the people I met, and the information that I got. So, John, what I'd like for you to do is to share with our viewing audience today who Mended Hearts is and what they do.
Sure. Mended Hearts is an international volunteer group of heart patients, many of whom have had open heart surgery, but there are other heart issues as well. And our main purpose is to offer encouragement and hope to heart patients who are currently undergoing heart procedures in hospitals across the Central Virginia region. We visit in 8 hospitals in the Richmond area. We have an active accredited visitor program that we'll talk about later today. And this is how we structure our organization to give education and resource information to patients in the hospitals. And that is our main purpose and our mission statement. Our background goes back to 1951 when the organization was established in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
Dwight Harkin was a surgeon in Boston, and he had 4 patients that he had performed open heart surgery upon. And these 4 patients got together and talked among themselves and decided that they wanted to continue to meet and that they wanted to establish an organization that others could join who've had similar experiences as they. And that was the genesis of the Mended Hearts program. And now we have expanded to over 246 chapters in the United States and Canada. We visit about 265,000 patients nationwide and in Canada every year. And that's a testament to the work that Mended Hearts does.
Now, you mentioned that there were, 4 heart patients and they got together and decided that they wanted to continue to meet.
Right.
One of the things that I found most touching, most impressionable when I went to my first meeting was the Mended Hearts. Is it the Mended Hearts prayer?
Yes.
Would you recite that? Or do you know
I
it?
wish that I could. I always read it.
Oh,
You notice I always have it in my hand and I always read it.
I thought you would know. That's why I was shuffling it off of you.
I don't think anyone has memorized
But
it.
it reminds me of the AA prayer, where, it talks about, we turn our lives over to God, and this whole heart issue is something beyond our control, and, asking your higher power to give you the strength to deal with those things. And even though you're not talking about other types of addictive disorders, you're talking about something that you really have no control over. And I found that very touching, and that was one of many things that impressed me. Now, the Richmond chapter, you talked about the origin of the national organization, but when did the Richmond chapter organize, and how active? How long has that been in existence?
Chapter 28, which is the Central Virginia chapter of Mended Hearts, is our chapter, and it was chartered in 1975.
Okay.
And in the year 23, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. 2020 was our 50th anniversary. And now it's 53 years that we've been in existence in the Central Virginia area.
When do you meet, and how often? Tell me a little bit about the meetings, the physical meetings themselves.
Sure. We meet the first Tuesday of every month at 7 o'clock. Odd months, we meet at Chippenham Hospital in the Krause Auditorium on the second floor. And on even months, we meet at Henrico Doctors Hospital in the Williamsburg Conference Room, same time, 7 o'clock.
Okay,
First Tuesday of every month.
So it's just once a month that we have to be concerned about a meeting with everyone's busy schedule, but this is something that, is important to the individual for their life and longevity.
Yeah.
What about people who live, I've been to meetings and we've had people come as far as Fredericksburg in Northern Virginia. The meetings are deemed so beneficial that they'll drive 100 miles, to a meeting. But for those persons who, because of health or other, commitments, can't physically attend the meeting, is there another way that they can have access to the meetings or the information?
Yes, it is. If you look at any of the Mended Hearts brochures that we distribute in the hospitals or at any venue where Mended Hearts has a presence, like the American Heart Association Heart Walk or fairs, where we have a separate booth, our brochure has a number that you can call, and we'll put you on a newsletter list and mail you information about our meetings, who is speaking, and you can communicate with us that way. Our meetings are open to the general public. You do not have to join the organization. Part of our mission is to educate people on how to live their lives fully and happily with heart disease.
Okay, as you talked about the newsletter and so forth, what about Zoom meetings? Is that a possibility?
When they contact us and they are interested in a Zoom meeting, they let us know, and then the person that broadcasts our Zoom meetings will send them an email.
Okay.
We'll give them the number that they'll put in. Actually, we changed from Zoom to Google. It's a program on Google.
Okay.
I can't think of it now. But if we put that information up on a board later.
Okay, we'll put that at the end of our broadcast, information for those in the audience who may not be able to physically make a meeting but would like the information, would like to be a part of a meeting. You can subscribe to that. The information that's disseminated at these meetings, we have had a speaker recently, a gastrointestinal person, who talks about the importance of eating and the gut to heart health. I know in some of the upcoming meetings, everyone is talking about mental disorders and so forth, but more importantly, what you eat and your mind and your state of being, all of that affects your heart. And, one of the things that I think is so important that we don't think about often is that the best time to take care of heart disorders or the potential heart disease is when you're young and before you have a problem. Because the stronger you are, the more likely you are to have a quicker and more successful recovery.
Absolutely.
I've seen people in varying degrees, and I know I was very frustrated after I had my procedure because I was like one step on this side or the other side of the grass, and I'd always been very physically active, but I am aware that because I was so physically active when I was younger, that helped with whatever I had to deal with. The lifestyle for someone who has experienced heart issues, a heart attack, a heart transplant, whatever it is, how is that most, how does that affect most people?
Well, when you first have a heart event, it can be a scary experience. And the heart patient thinks, I'll never be able to do what I did before this event. And I'm here as living proof to say that, yes, you can. Every patient is different, of course. But in general, as I talk to many, many heart patients, I hear similar patterns. And in Mended Hearts, everyone's had some type of heart procedure. And we're there sharing our experiences with new members that join us, either by coming to the meetings or Zoom presentations. And we're living proof that you can do everything you did before. As a matter of fact, we encourage physical activity. That is a very important regimen after a heart event, so that you stay strong, that you keep your immune system in good shape. A lot of people walk. That's great exercise for the heart. People like to piddle in a garden. That's also great exercise for the heart. Instead of sending someone to the grocery store, go out there, get in your car, drive to the grocery store, get your groceries, put them in the car, and drive back home. Staying active. Don't sit around saying, I better not overexert myself, because the heart needs that exercise.
It needs to be stretched.
It has to be strengthened, yes, and that's what will do it.
It's interesting you said that when people have a heart event, a lot of times they're scared. We had recently a young man come to our meeting, and he hadn't had his heart procedure yet, but he was like a nervous wreck. The day he was at the meeting, I think he was going to have his heart procedure the very next day. He was a nervous wreck. I think he made everybody else in the room, nervous.
He definitely did.
But, when you talk about being scared, I kind of think back on my situation, that poem Footprints, where they said, God carried you. People said to me, all I knew is something was wrong, and I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't think, but I could walk. And I went down the steps and I said, let me just get to the bottom of the steps. Don't worry about what's at the bottom. Then it was, let's get through the front door. Let's not worry about what's on the other side of the front door. Let's get to the car. Let's get to the street. And I just kind of slow talked myself, to the emergency room. And I knew, I couldn't be scared. I couldn't get nervous because I felt a change in my emotion one way or the other. I would have just been in trouble because I was alone. No one was there. And, you talk about the fear part. I walked in and the nurse in the emergency room, they took me right away. And they said, oh, they'll just probably put 2 or 3 stents in and, you'll be fine in 2 or 3 days. And about 10 minutes later, the cardiologist, he comes rushing through the door. He goes, well, if we don't get you to surgery, you won't be here in the next 8 hours. Send her up to cardiac intensive care. Scared? I didn't have time to be scared. I mean, because he's saying, you won't be here. I'm trying to process that. You're in cardiac arrest. I'd never been told I had heart issues. I'm just going along with the program. I mean, I guess that was kind of, for someone else fear, but for me, it happened so fast, I didn't have a chance to be fearful. So, the scary part, you can go from like me, okay, whatever, to this guy. Everybody felt sorry for him because he was a nervous wreck. Um, and yes, you do think, because I felt after I had my procedure, okay, the next step is not pleasant, and I'm going to have to prepare for this, and I'm restricted here. But thank God I came to the Mended Hearts meeting, and you and a lot of other members were walking around, and many of you had the same cardiologist, and some of you had a different cardiologist. And I'm hearing you say, "Well, I had my procedure 20 years ago or 25 years ago," and I'm like, and they're still here, and I was right. I wasn't even giving myself 3 years. So it's, I think the Mended Heart meeting itself, and like those four people who had the vision to say, let's continue meeting, it was a vision for the rest of us, because I can speak with conviction and tell people it makes a difference when you're talking to another person who's been through that procedure or a similar procedure, and it was 3 years or it was 5 years or 10 years, because you're not no longer just comparing yourself to somebody who had a heart attack and died. You're able to compare yourself to the advances in medical technology standing before you, and someone who's had a heart attack and is still living 15, 20, 25 years, down the road. And the other thing that I found interesting, and I got from Mended Heart and talking with members, is all of the different types of procedures and all the different types of things that could, progress positively and some adversely. And for me, talking with the members at Mended Heart helped me with potential fear that I would have had, because all of it's an unknown. And the value of Mended Hearts is you're sitting in a room with people who have, for all intensive purposes, you're an educator, have their PhD in heart disorder. And, you just really need that help to get, put one foot in front of the other.
But I would say, in addition to what you just mentioned, you have a very positive personality. And what you did after your heart event was that you took control of your life and you actively sought out Mended Hearts. One of the things that we hear repeatedly in our education training with Mended Hearts is that some people become depressed after heart surgery. A variety of reasons for that. One, they feel like they're useless, that they're not the man or the woman that they were. They're forever changed. And they lose interest in activities that keep them vibrant, healthy, young, and they just sit around and mope. And if it extends for a long period of time, it's going to be detrimental to one's recovery, because you're going to live with heart disease right up to the very end. And Mended Hearts wants all heart patients to live a vibrant life, a happy life, and a full life. But you can't do that unless you take control of your medical situation, that you have honest conversations with your doctor, and that if he mentions a term or procedure and you don't know about it, you stop him and you question him and you ask him to please explain what this means to me. Particularly medication. Some people take medication because the doctor said take medication, but they don't know what it is. And they go on a certain medication, and then all of a sudden they've lost their energy or something, and they never call the doctor back to let them know that I feel worse now that I'm on this medication. A heart patient must take control of their lives, and that's going to be a key to living that full, healthy lifestyle.
I'm glad you spoke to that issue, because it's even more so with women. Women we tend a lot of times, if we do speak up, a lot of times we're written off as being emotional or oversensitive or something like that. And I would just like to echo to the audience what John has said in terms of being an advocate for yourself and
Right.
speaking up. But it's also important to know your body. And you mentioned these things, and um, I didn't necessarily want to be the one to test them all. Like at a buffet, you go around and test everything. But I had an interesting situation where, um, yes, I had my procedure and my doctor prescribed medication. And I went on for 3 or 4 months, and I began to feel a little better. But then I started going backwards in terms of not feeling as energetic and strong. And it got to a point when I went to the Mended Hearts meetings and I was talking to people, and I said, well, they said, how are you doing? And I always like to say I'm doing fine, but
Right.
I said, well, I'm still a little slow, and this, that, and the other. And a couple of them said, well, you shouldn't be feeling slow now. And I'm like, well, I am. And then fortunately, we had a cardiologist come in and speak, because we do have people from the pharmaceutical companies, representatives from the companies that make the various heart devices. They will come and talk about the new advances, how these things work. Members at the meeting, we get a chance to hold them, to literally see these things, even though it's not something that we would use. But, and I normally don't go up and speak to people, at break, because I listen during the presentation. But I went up to this doctor and I said, well, it's been almost 6 months and I'm feeling like this, that, or the other. And he said, call my office, tell my nurse to move you up. I want to see you right away. And a lot of the members at the meeting had this particular doctor, and the doctor that I had, and I will say today, he saved my life, the original one,
Yes.
but it wasn't working. And so I went to him, and fast forwarding, it was 3 or 4 months. And when we got all the additional test results back, and I had been complaining to my doctor that had done my heart procedure every single month. I was having problems where I went into his office and I specifically told him how I was feeling. So the second doctor that I met at Mended Hearts, he said something is wrong. It's very rare and unusual, but your arteries, the main one that they call the widowmaker, had clogged back up again. And he goes, well, we've got a drill and it's very dangerous. And I'm like, when you talk about drilling a vein, a little vein, I'm seeing these guys in the street with jackhammers. And I'm like, and so I said, in addition, you talk about medicines that don't work. One of the main medicines that I was taking, the doctor prescribed, and it's a very popular medicine, and a lot of people take it. I just happened to be one of those crazy people who was allergic to it.
Mm.
And it was attacking my heart muscle. So instead of going forward, I was going backwards. In essence, it was killing me. And and I was really feeling dead too. I was going down fast. And I spoke to people. You probably remember when I was a little slow at the meeting.
I do remember.
And so I said, well, let me stick with this new doctor that's found everything. And he scheduled a second heart procedure, and that was a little more risky than the first one because we're going back in twice in 12 months. And I was a little miffed with this other doctor because he saved my life, the first time. And whenever I went to see him, he always made time. And I'm saying this for a reason. I was advocating. This was a doctor who took time. He listened to me. He scratched his head. He tried to come up with things. And, so often we can get angry with people and badmouth people, but something in my spirit wouldn't let me do that. I said, well, let's just get this thing fixed. So after I got the second procedure done and was doing better, I scheduled an appointment. I took the medical records in. I said, this is how I was feeling. This is what you did. This is what didn't happen. I said, what happened? And I said to him, I said, there is no question in my mind because of his references and, so forth. You're a good doctor, but you missed it. And I think that's important because it's not, you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face. You don't want to say someone's bad. You want to look at the facts. And it was very simple. He apologized and he said, I was so busy listening to you. And I had some suggestions, and my suggestions can be strong. He was trying to accommodate me over his own professional knowledge. And, it all worked out. And, because I just didn't know how he missed it. But I had several people, nurses tell me, members of Mended Hearts. And what we have to realize is all of these cardiologists, and you have some good ones, and most doctors, they're human first. And all human beings make mistakes. And I'm just thankful the way it worked out. I was able to find out what happened, why this doctor, it was an error, but thank God it wasn't a fatal error. And I have a relationship with both of them. And so I think I have the best of both worlds because I have someone who's really aggressively on the forefront and then I have the backup. But I'm speaking to the issue that you raised of advocating, and particularly women. You argue, I went to this first doctor March, April, May, June. Nothing. But there was one test that he did not do. And it was a nuclear stress test. And this other doctor did. And that tipped the scales and told us what was going on. And how did you miss this? But it all worked out. So, taking charge, advocating for yourself if you feel good, and it's important when you talk about the exercise to make your diet important and weight gain and fluid because all of that has a tremendous impact on your heart.
It certainly does.
We're talking about heart events. And another thing that I've realized is that women typically do not have the same symptoms that men have because they said women's symptoms are different. And a lot of times we have warning signs a month or two ahead of the event. Because when I woke up with the chest pain that Friday, I was talking to my cousin and she was saying, oh, how are you doing? And I'm dancing saying, oh, I'm fine. And then Sunday I'm having a heart attack. But I had no pains in my arm, no dizziness, no anything, any of the signs that they talked about. Does it feel like an elephant sitting in your chest? I don't know what an elephant sitting in my chest is. I had situations that was not anxiety that doctors over the years had said was anxiety. But all I knew is I had that one time that night that my chest hurt so bad, it woke me up out of a sleep. So for women, I think we just need the best thing to do is when you have your physicals, make sure you address having a physical, or test related to the heart as well.
Sure.
This month, it's Mother's Day, and they say it's Women's Health Month and all of this kind of stuff. One statistic that I found out is that when I had my heart attack a couple of years ago is that more women die of heart attacks than they do of breast cancer and all the other types of illnesses. It kills more women than any of those things. And recently, there was a football player, I don't remember his name because I'm not that into football, that was 24, and he had a heart event. So I think because of the media and technology, we're hearing more and more, but now heart attack is not the guy that sat behind the desk and had the heart attack at 55. It's people in their teens, in their 20s, in their 30s. And that's why I say it's so important, I think, to start taking care of your heart and having that addressed as a part of your physical, long before you have any events. Can you give us some statistics on, the percentage of people with heart attacks and, how it's progressed over the years?
Sure. What you say is absolutely true. A lot of people have chronic heart disease. They have no idea that they have it because not everyone has pain in heart attacks. A certain percentage of diabetics, particularly men, will feel no pain in a heart attack. And I'm one of those individuals. I was out running on the Vita course at Bird Park, and I started sweating profusely. And I said, I'm out of weight. I'm so glad I'm out here running. And as I continued, I slowed down, and then I got really, really tired. And I'm going to sit down and rest for a moment. And so I sat down, and, after about 10 minutes, I felt fine. I got up and I walked down to that lake there. They had a little stand there where you could get drinks, and I got a Diet Coke.
Mm-hmm.
And I drank it, got in my car, drove home, went to the theater that night, dancing in a musical, singing, acting. 2 weeks later, I had a regularly scheduled doctor's appointment, and it just happened to include an EKG. And I could see a puzzled look on my doctor's face. And he said, "Do you feel okay?" I said, "I feel great." And I did. I felt great. He said, "Well, I see these inverted T waves, and they really concern me. I want to send you to the Heart Institute."
And you didn't know what an inverted
I
T
had
wave was?
no idea. And I was in my late 30s, early 40s. And you just never talked about heart disease back then.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly when you're young, heart disease was something that the elderly dealt
Right.
with. And I said, "Well, I feel fine. I don't know why he's so concerned." Well, I went, had a catheterization. They went in through the arm. There's the scar.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, they would go in. Now they can go in the wrist and doesn't even leave a scar. But I had that done, and I had a certain amount of blockage that, because I was running intensely on a hot day,
Mm-hmm.
it got to me, and I started sweating, and I just needed to rest the heart and give it a moment to calm down. I would have never thought that I had a heart attack, but I did. And it had done minor damage to the heart muscle. It's called silent ischemia. No pain, no warning. And until it was diagnosed through the catheterization, I had no idea that I'd had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm. And what you're saying is very serious and very severe. And you're walking around with no idea. Because when this doctor came in, and before he said it, no, he did say, "You won't be alive if we don't operate." He said, and I'm like just looking at him and waiting for the why, which he quickly gave me. He said, "You have 2 arteries that are 99% blocked, and the third one's not much better." That's not minor. So, what you're saying and what I'm saying and what we're trying to share with those who are listening today is, for God's sakes, do not assume just because you feel well, all is well. Because my cousin had asked me that Friday, "How are you doing?" And I'm twirling around, "Oh, I feel wonderful," like you were in the play.
Right.
But that's how, and we're sharing this information because, recently we've seen on TV so many actors and actresses, people in the news have died of heart attacks. And they're 57, 54,
Yeah.
I was in my 60s, so, but still.
It's still the number one killer of people in the United States.
Yes.
Far surpasses cancer deaths. It is the number one killer, and it used to be 675,000. It has crept up to 700,000 now. And heart disease is moving down into the younger generation.
Yes.
And it's too early for a lot of the data to really be conclusive as to why this is happening. We feel the stress in our society today, but it hasn't been analyzed. But we do know statistically that heart disease is now affecting people in their 20s and 30s, and it didn't do that 20, 30, 40 years ago.
You know, one thing I've shared with people is I remember my grandmother. You know, they would cook with cinnamon and nutmeg and olive oil and, you know, all kinds of herbs. And I was recently told that I had low levels of selenium, which I need to have a little more selenium, whatever it is. But in Googling it, it deals with, you know, metabolism, and it's very important to you. And in some of the reading, it said, well, a lot of the soil that plants are grown in today are low in a lot of these nutrients, selenium. So, you know, and I'm not a doctor, nor am I saying that this is a case, but I just wonder the quality of our food that's even grown today isn't of the quality it was 100 years ago because of the soil it's grown in.
True.
And it's almost a natural evolution. So you have to compensate to be aware of what you don't have and what you do, you know, do not have. So that's why it's important to, you know, get your blood work, have a physical. I mean, health insurance and medicine isn't cheap, but you know what is. I mean, it's the best way forward. It becomes a question. What lifestyle changes would you, you know, 2 or 3 lifestyle changes would you recommend? And you've said some of them for heart patients.
First and foremost, it would be diet. That has to be changed right away. Reducing the salt intake, but do not equate that with no salt, because the body needs a certain amount of salt. But processed foods contains so much sodium today that we don't need to supplement it with the salt shaker when we sit down for a meal. There are such things as a heart healthy food, and we need to see which of those we like and which we can work into a diet so that we don't feel like we're drastically changing everything that we eat, but we're eating more healthy. And Mended Hearts has a national website, mendedhearts.org, and you can go to that website and actually print out heart healthy menus, heart healthy foods. Your cardiologist's office has brochures on this. The second thing is to take your medication. If you're taking heart medication, take it every day at the same time every day. Heart medicines have to be timed, and you can't miss a dose, skip a dose, and then take 2 the next day to make up for it. That could be detrimental to your health. And physical exercise would be the third thing that I would say. If it's not a part of your regular lifestyle, add it. And nobody's saying going out and lift weights and running, because running, you know, after a certain age, running's bad for your knees. You know, if your knees are not used to it. But walking is good. If you can get some type of cardio workout, walking is not a cardio workout. So if you go to a gym and spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes riding a bike.
That's cardio.
Yeah, okay. That's cardio exercise. And that's should be a part of one's exercise regimen.
One thing you mentioned, the first thing was the diet, like salt and so forth. And I've always been a big salt person. And I always said, if I have a heart attack, I will enjoy it in salt. But no, the pain of the heart attack is not fun. I take that back. But since my heart event, I've been using more herbs and so forth. And I used to use a lot of herbs and spices anyway, but now I use more, and I use certain ones for certain needs
Right.
that I know I have. And I have done, cooking, and some of my friends who come over and, they eat, they frequently comment, and this is the truth, how good the food tastes, and I have put absolutely no salt in it. It's hard to imagine, because you could not have convinced me that food would taste that good with no salt, but you
Right.
get the special combination of spices and it will do the trick. And again, we'll have some information at the end of this taping of how you can reach Mended Hearts, where you can write or text or what have you to get menus and so forth. And a lot of times we have menus on recipes, is what I want to say, on mixes that you can do that will create a taste that will substitute salt. Um, and that the diet is one easy thing that you can really, really change. What about the advances in heart treatment medically over the past 10, 20 years?
Oh, there have been so many. One thing about the contemporary society is that we're right in the midst of the technological revolution, and it has a lot of positives. It has negatives as well. But for instance, for years they've been breaking up kidney stones with sound waves. Well, cardiologists have now developed a technique of breaking up blockages in arteries by using sound waves in a similar way that they've been breaking up kidney stones for years.
So that's what they did when they did my procedure, and they said they had to drill or break up the plaque or whatever.
Well, you can actually drill angioplasty.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually drill, and it's a little knife
Mm-hmm.
that turns through.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the sound wave,
Oh,
but it's another way of
I had the drill.
breaking up the blockages. But they use these sound waves, and they put a little tube in that sucks the debris out, so you don't have to worry about it flowing through the artery and maybe causing a blood clot that could end up causing a stroke or heart attack. And that is relatively new. And it's used in the Central Virginia area, but there's only a few doctors that know this particular technique. But it's out there. There have been great advancements in bypass. They can do some bypass surgery without cracking the chest open. They go in through the rib cage and can do it. And all of this continues to improve. The heart devices are getting better and smaller. If you have to go on a heart pump, they used to be huge and you had to wear them on your waist.
Yeah.
And now they have made them much smaller, that you would think somebody just had a cell phone or something hanging on their belt. But those kind of advancements will continue. Mended Hearts funds some of those research programs, as well as the American Heart Association. And so new developments are coming out all the time. Three-dimensional hearts will eventually be used instead of pig hearts and the mechanical hearts that have been used in heart transplants. That they can use 3D technology. In one of our meetings, we had a heart surgeon from McGuire's that talked about using this, and he's on the cutting edge of making these computer models of the heart and then actually producing a working heart that can actually go into somebody's body. That sounds to me like the 5th century, but it's here.
And, this kind of information, we're inundated with information in society today, but we all have certain things that are particular to us.
Right.
And for people who've had heart events, you want to know everything you can find out about what's going on, what's being developed.
Absolutely.
With heart stuff. And again, I come back to, I have not missed one Mended Hearts meeting since I started. And, what was it, February or January or February of last year. At first I thought, I'll come to one or two. But the first 2 or 3 led to 4 and 5 and so forth and so on, because each speaker, it was something different that, whether it's learning about different devices or having someone talk about how the gut, impacts the heart, and I mean directly. It's information, it's knowledge, and it's not just for people. The Mended Hearts meetings are not just for people who have had heart events, but for family members, for friends, for people who are around people that have had events.
Absolutely.
We talk to young people all the time, and they say a grandparent or a cousin or an uncle or something, and the more you know, you can help them. You can even share information that they may not have. Because after all, if it's a grandparent, you love that grandparent. You want them here, and if it's something you can tell them that'll help, them stay here longer, it's all worth it. Before we begin to wrap up, John, I'd like to ask you, how can caregivers or friends fit into the life of people recovering from heart events?
The caregiver is one of the most important team members in helping a heart patient recover from a heart event. It's that caregiver who is living with the heart patient. And Mended Hearts focuses a lot on the caregiver, because the better prepared the caregiver is, the better able they will be to help the heart patient. The problem is that the caregivers are so worried that they stress themselves out. Many of them become depressed and even develop feelings of anger and resentment toward their loved one who's dealing with recovery from a major heart event. So the role of the caregiver is a key one. And Mended Hearts, we do have speakers that come in and talk about the role of the caregiver and what you can do. I would say in general terms, when we visit with caregivers and patients, we say, don't enable this heart patient. But I know you love them so much, but if they want a glass of water, don't go get it for them and hand it to them. Make them get up out of the chair or out of the bed and say, I will walk with you. Because that exercise and movement is key to recovery. And the more that they are active and moving, the quicker that recovery will be, and they'll get back to normal. The caregiver has to also give themselves rest and involve other family members in the caretaking process. Having a friend, a next door neighbor, a relative come in and spend an hour, 2 hours, so that the caregiver can go shopping or get a friend and go to a movie, because that caregiver has to stay in good health, because if they get sick, who's going to care for the heart patient? Mm-hmm. And so that role of the caregiver is a very, very important one, and it's one of the focus areas of our training as accredited visitors in the Mended Hearts program.
Which brings me to my next question.
Okay.
The accredited visitor program. What is that all about?
I love to talk about the accredited Visitors Program. That is the crux of Mended Hearts. That is the true mission of Mended Hearts, to go out into all of the hospitals and educate the heart patients. And that's what the accredited visitor does. You can recognize accredited visitors with the red vest. Whenever you are in a hospital and you see someone walking with a red vest, you'll go, there's a Mended Hearts visitor. Any member of Mended Hearts can become an accredited visitor. You have to go through a training
That was going to be my
process.
next question.
Yeah, you have to go through a training process, and then you have to reaccreditate yourself every year. So it's that you're constantly being educated yourself, because you have this responsibility to educate and help your heart patients. So you have to be informed, and you don't want to fall into bad habits and forget
Such as,
things.
what kind of things would you need to be informed of just to be an accredited visitor?
Well, the most important thing is you're not there to give medical advice.
Okay.
And the accredited visitor has to realize that every patient is different, and that patient's not going to be helped because of what you did in your recovery. I had a quadruple bypass. So when I talk to bypass patients, I can identify with so much of what they feel and they think, but they may have medical issues that were different from mine. And so I can't say, well, you should go to cardiac rehab and talk about cardiac rehab when their doctor hasn't mentioned it, because the doctor knows this patient is not a good candidate for cardiac rehab.
So in essence, when you say accredited, you talk about training, because I would think, if I'm going to just visit someone, you just go, anyone knows you could walk in a room and visit and say hi and talk about anything. But in the accredited aspect of the training, you're almost trained as a facilitator of conversation for these people, to meet them where they are. And meeting them where they are automatically takes into consideration the fact that you can't make recommendations, you can't make comparisons. These are people you typically, the visitor doesn't know. You're the visitor and you don't know this person. Right. So you're there to greet them, encourage them to do what the doctors say, and to listen more than to give advice.
That's the key, is to listen.
Which is a commodity in today's society.
Yeah. They have to really train us not to start telling our story to the patient.
To listen. Yeah.
The important thing is to listen to the patient.
Right, okay.
Give that support, that encouragement, hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And before we wrap up, John, and I've asked you and I wanted you to come, because we've been talking and chatting and doing fun things for about a year, but I'm still a neophyte when it comes to all this heart stuff. And I see you as the wise person, and that has been through a lot. And
well, thank you.
And I've helped the organization, and despite all of us having health challenges, we give what we can. And to those who are listening to us today, not only do we have meetings, have speakers come in, we do have fun. We had a wonderful Christmas affair at a local restaurant with between 40 and 50 members and spouses, and we do that every year.
We love food.
Yes. One other thing, in terms of people qualifying and so forth, what are those little buttons all on? Do you qualify for those too, or
yes.
What are they?
This doesn't mean I'm a general.
Okay.
At Mended Hearts. The hospitals at which you work have certain pins that they get. And so this is St. Mary, because I visited St. Mary's Hospital.
Okay.
And this is the old Mended Heart symbol. We have a new symbol now, which is this one.
Right.
And then this is the Bon Secours pen
Okay.
that I'm a volunteer with Bon Secours
Okay.
Hospitals, and of course the name tag. And there's one up here. This was the 50th anniversary of the volunteer department at St. Mary's.
Okay. And you know, when you mentioned 50th anniversary and so forth, one thing I forgot to mention, and I thought when I heard about it, I said, well, who goes to an annual convention for heart patients? The the Mended Hearts has an annual convention.
They do.
And can you just tell us quickly why do you feel the need to have an annual convention? Not
Well,
like
they're
you had a
wonderful.
heart attack and go on about your business.
They are wonderful. I went to San Antonio, Texas.
Which was wonderful. I love San Antonio.
Beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful city. That canal walk.
Oh, yes, the river
And
walk.
we stayed in the Omni Hotel right on the Riverwalk.
Mm-hmm.
It was a week.
Mm-hmm.
And we had top heart surgeons from Houston,
Okay.
Dallas. They all came there. They were giving lectures. And then you'd break into small groups and talk about what other chapters are doing across the country, sharing information, making contacts, getting Zoom information so that you could tap into what the Los Angeles chapter is doing when they meet. That education is so important, and you're getting the best of the best when you go to the national conventions. The pandemic slowed that down. We haven't had one in the last 3 years, but they're going to start up again next year.
Wonderful.
And we'll be back to meeting people from across the United States and Canada.
So that's just another excuse to travel with a purpose and get information.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's fascinating, and I'm looking forward to going to a convention. I'm really looking forward to it, but I know because of the pandemic, it's taken a while to get going. John, again, I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience, your knowledge, and with me and with the audience. And I really hope that it is able to help others to look into their health and particularly take care of your heart and those that you love. Thank you, and I look forward to joining you next time.